Welcome back. A new day is coming for sports fans and gamblers. The question is, if you live in Florida, are you invited to the party? The U.S. Supreme Court just struck down a federal law banning sports betting. It is now up to each state to write its own rules. Several states like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Mississippi are poised to do just that, but currently Florida law prohibits sports gambling. With the Supreme Court decision, pressure the legislature to legalize sports betting, and would that be a good thing? Joining us for more, Jaquan Cathy of the DAPA Sports Desk, Frank Alcock, a political science professor at New College, and joining us by Skype from Tampa is Tyler Bradley of Sports Talk Florida. Welcome to all of you. Frank, what is the current status of Florida law in terms of sports gambling, given the fact that the federal law has just been overturned?
So because the federal law was in place, it was banned in Florida, just like most of the rest of the places in the country outside of Las Vegas. Now that the federal ban has been lifted, it's a void. It has to be authorized by the legislature, but in the state of Florida, the rules regarding different forms of gambling, some of them are within the Constitution and some of them are within statutes. So at the moment, it's not been authorized, but the politics will kick in.
And there's also a ballot initiative that will be on the ballot in November, Amendment 3.
Amendment 3 would essentially block any expansion of gambling in the state unless a subsequent citizens initiative were put on the ballot behind this ballot amendment to reopen the door to that. So this could actually have a big impact on, I think, this.
Jaquan, the reality is, and you're going to demonstrate this a little bit later, that sports betting really already takes place in Florida and in every other state, correct?
Most definitely. It was illegal, but there is a loophole that it's like a handshake deal almost, where the money goes through outside of the United States. It can go through Turkey, China, the UK, Canada, just anywhere that's not the United States.
So the servers are in offices somewhere in those countries that you describe, and you send your money to those countries, and you get checks back from them?
Yeah, you get checks back due to the servers. Where the servers are, the checks could take 2, 3, sometimes 4 weeks, but you do get it back.
Tyler, what kind of market is there for sports gambling, not only in the United States, but here in Florida?
Here in Florida, I believe that the market would be absolutely huge. It's going to change the way gambling altogether is. They're talking about in-stadium experiences where you could go to a Tampa Bay Rays game per se, and the count could be 3-2, and you can bet whether the next pitch is going to be a strike, a hit, a walk, whatever you think it could be. And of course, as long as there's sports fans and gambling's involved, it's going to be a big, big sell.
And would that include professional sports teams as well as college?
I believe so, especially down here in the South. We see how big college football is. I believe that the gambling in college football is going to be just as big as it would in any professional sport here in the state of Florida.
And Frank, I would imagine that raises a lot of concerns from people who are concerned about gambling to begin with, gambling when it comes to college sports and student athletes.
Yeah, there's lots to talk about. It's an enormous amount of potential revenue. That's one set of issues. There are certainly addiction concerns, but I do think a lot of people that want to gamble already do. We just don't get a cut of that revenue. But having a variety of in-state, sometimes in-facility wagers on specific sporting events, is that going to harm the integrity of these events, of these games?
And Jaquan, do you have any kind of idea of how many people in our community are gambling online right now, as we've discussed?
Not really how many people, but about $150 billion exchange hands between bettors and bookies each year.
And right now, can you gamble not only on professional sports but also college sports?
Yes, I can. I placed a bet on the national championship game, and I won that bet, and that is a tricky situation, especially with the college students coming for most college students come from their background. Everybody comes from a great background, so that could be extremely tricky.
Okay, we have to take a quick break, and we'll have much more on sports gambling right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. The U.S. Supreme Court has struck down a federal law banning sports betting, but will you be able to do it in Florida? Joining us for more, Jaquan Cathy of the Dapper Sports Desk. Frank Alcock is a political science professor at New College, and joining us by Skype from Tampa is Tyler Bradley of Sports Talk Florida. So, Jaquan, first, can you describe right now, if you want to place a sports bet online, how would you do it?
So the site I use is Bovada, bovada.lv. I use Bovada because it's the highest rated of all the online casinos. So you log into Bovada, you set up an account, you enter your bank information, which I know, which is kind of be scary, especially, you know, it's not completely legal, but you can, it's a casino as well, so you can do poker on there, blackjack, other games, but they just have sports gambling. So you will enter your credit card information, and they will have that on file, so that can be scary. But for me, I trust my bank institutions for anything that can be flawed. When you make the transaction will go through another country. The last transaction I did, it went through Turkey, for example. So my money went through Turkey. Bovada has the server in Turkey, so they have the money there. I'll place the wager, and then if I win, I will get the money via a check in 2 to 3 or 4 weeks, and if I lose, then I lose my money.
Frank, it almost sounds like this is a similar type of discussion that we had with legalizing marijuana, that if a state or the federal government legalizes it, you could tax it and fill up the federal or state coffers. If you legalize sports gambling, it would be a boon to the Florida Treasury.
Yes, there's some parallels, certainly. I think with the gaming and gambling, you can get the experience without being physically present. And so this is going to open up more domestic servers that are doing these things online, probably more online sites that'll cater now to this. However, there's a whole sports gaming experience where in this country, if you want to do that, you have to go to Vegas and nowhere else. And so this opens the door up to expanding the portfolio of gambling experiences or forms of gambling experiences in Florida. And who is going to get that? Is that going to be simply limited to the Seminole tribe, or can we do that anywhere? Or maybe just in pari-mutuels? That's going to be determined by the legislature.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Amendment 3, which is going to be on the ballot, is a mechanism which some would suggest would benefit the Seminoles and the other Indian tribes in Florida.
Yes, and Amendment 3, the petitions have been collected for a while, and so that was not designed with a view towards this new sports gaming opportunity that's coming up. But what Amendment 3 would do if it were to pass, it would require Florida citizens to approve via a constitutional ballot amendment any expansion of gambling in Florida. However, that amendment specifies a citizens' initiative as the vehicle for doing that, which means that the legislature could no longer put something on the ballot for the citizens of Florida. It would require actually citizens themselves to spend millions of dollars to actually put another ballot. And again, it would make it very, very difficult to expand gambling in this country.
Tyler, what does your listeners tell you about this? I mean, if you listen to any sports talk show in our area, there is a lot of discussion about odds of the NFL game coming up this week, or the NHL game, or so forth. Do you get a sense that there is a real appetite for legalized sports gambling in our area?
Oh, without a doubt, there's no question. Callers all the time are calling up. As soon as the federal court came down with the ruling, we had plenty of callers that day even that were real jacked up about it. They were so excited, and they really can't wait to get it going.
We're talking about that some of the you'll be able to bet on, narrowing it down to what a pitcher is going to throw, or what kind of play is going to be called. Are people concerned that heads or tails, in terms of starting a game? Are people concerned that this is going to have an impact on what happens on the field or the court?
I very well think so myself, yes. The one thing that we have to be concerned about now is what kind of rules are going to be in place to keep games from being thrown or games from being scripted, and that would really favor certain people's pockets or certain teams. That's one thing that I'm definitely interested to see, what kind of rules are going to be in place.
And what are the pro sports teams saying about this, whether you're talking about the NFL, the Major League Baseball, or the NBA, or hockey?
Well, the day that the ruling came down, Mark Cuban came out, and the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and he was very adamant that this just doubled our profit, this just doubled our worth. And I know owners and everyone in the front offices alike are all very excited that the ruling is what it is.
And Jaquan, there was a story that was in the Tampa Bay Times that recently said that since the emergence of the internet, the gaming industry has been at war with the illegal sports betting industry. What does that mean?
For me, it means like, so you have the casinos, you have the online casinos, you have Vegas, and then you have bookies, people who have their own money or have investors, and they do their own on gambling. I know a few. I don't go through them particularly just because I don't trust them, but that can get where you can get extremely murky, where like you owe me money or where's my money type deal, when you're not going through an institution even though it's illegal.
And Frank, these are the kinds of things that raise a lot of concerns.
Yeah, they're economic concepts here, and so there's always going to be an amazing amount of demand for gaming and gambling. It's been there for as long as we've existed, I think, as human beings. Exclusivity in terms of giving people those experiences generates huge profits. And so prior to the internet, it was simply bookies, which were illegal. That would be the vehicle for gaming. Since the advent of the internet and actually putting sites outside of this country, even though it's illegal, consumers, people that are interested, had that option, and so they're at war because the bookies would rather make them, keep that exclusivity, but they don't have it anymore. And now it's going to be relaxed even more.
We're going to go to final thoughts right now, but my first question to you, Frank, is what do you believe is the appetite of the Florida legislature right now to take advantage of the Supreme Court ruling, or are they just going to leave it up to voters?
I think it's mixed. I think the legislature would like to do something, but there's not a consensus about what to do. And there are many different interest groups involved in the gaming industry here. It's not just a few players. There are a lot of different players that have their own interests that they're trying to advance.
And Tyler, if there's one thing that you want your listeners and our viewers to know about what is happening right now and what is at stake, what would that be?
If you're a gambling fan, be excited. This is going to change the way that sports is played and ultimately viewed for the near future and moving forward. And if you're a gambler and you enjoy sports, as many people do, it's definitely something to be excited about.
Tyler, do you look forward to a day if this gets, the law keeps up with what's going on here, that you're not going to have to place your bets overseas and risk security issues in terms of sending your money overseas through whatever kind of servers and getting checks back from other countries and so forth?
Well, definitely. I think that they'll institute something that it won't take 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. If the state of Florida passes something like that, I think they will, or like with Amendment 3, that gets passed, leave it up to the casinos in place now. I think that'll be much better. They're trusted as we are now. I'm extremely excited about the future of sports gambling. Anybody who has a stake in live sports rights should be excited about this.
Frank, we did discuss this a little bit, but there are folks out there and organizations who are concerned about addiction and gambling addiction, and I would imagine that they are going to mount a considerable campaign to make sure that this does not go full bore in Florida.
Those voices will step up, I think, in the coming years. And so, as I said before, I mean, case in point, for those that are addicted or that have serious interests, their vehicles, the opportunities are already there. But the potential for this now to be everywhere and so easily accessible, yes, there could be an uptake in terms of the number of people that get exposed to gambling and the number of addictions that are out there. And there are people that are going to try to fight back against that.
All right, thank you all. Thanks to Jaquan Cathy of the Dapper Sports Desk, Frank Alcock, a political science professor at New College, and joining us by Skype from Tampa is Tyler Bradley of Sports Talk Florida.